Yan nga. Okay? Let me know if you have other concerns. Okay. Sige. So with that, maybe I should start. Chapter 4, Chemical Reactions. Again, two parts kasi itong chapter 4, but we are already done with the nomenclature. Okay, so we'll skip to chemical reaction. Okay. So our objective for this day is to learn the different types of chemical reaction and how to balance redox reactions. Okay. So in your high school, you are familiar with chemical reaction that follows this pattern, di ba? You have the general types of reaction, A plus B forming C, o kaya C forming A plus B, di ba? That was very high school, di ba? However, in college, no, we have to learn more specific types of chemical reaction, which you will see later. Okay? So yan. Let's just have a review. No, in your earlier chapters, we knew that there are two types of changes our matter can undergo. No? So it could be a physical change or it could be a chemical change or a chemical reaction. Again, just to emphasize, no, that in physical changes, your phase of matter changes. Okay, yung itsura lang niya yung nagbabago. However, its chemical constituency does not change. Okay? But in chemical changes, what happens here is something na kakaiba. Okay? So in the physical change, yung itsura lang yung nagbabago, and the physical state changes. In chemical changes, okay? So in chemical changes, dito na nagbabago ang kanyang chemical identity. Okay? So your reactant before is no longer the same as it was after the reaction. Okay? So ibig sabihin, they will bear different chemical formula. Ibig sabihin din, they will have different chemical properties. Okay? So, yun yung nangyayari when we have chemical changes. Okay? So, in your high school, we know that these are the general types of chemical reaction. You have the synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement, diba? Okay. But later on, we will have much more detailed types of chemical reaction. Okay. So, yan. Okay. So, again, reviewin lang natin yung high school. Okay. So, in your high school, when you say synthesis reactions, okay, basically what happens here is that your reactants combine to form the products. Okay. Very simple lang. If you have two species on the left, on the right, you have one species na lang. Okay. Two species on the left, pagdating sa right, one species na lang. Okay? So, that's the idea na kapag synthesis reaction, basically, your molecules no, are combining together to form an entirely new molecule. Okay? So, ganun. Okay? So, basically, we all know that, diba? Okay? And the next one, we have this one, this chemical reaction. Okay, so the decomposition reaction. This is another high school lesson. Okay, so in your high school, you knew that when we have decomposition reaction, basically your one molecule degrades into multiple products. Okay, so for example, if you electrolyze water, pag kinuryente mo yung tubig, it splits into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay? So as you can see in the composition, you start with with one reactant, okay? And then you end up with multiple products, okay? So that's the idea for decomposition. One reactant, multiple products, okay? So by the way, if you might be asking, no, saan sir yung balancing reaction? So the balancing reaction will be in your laboratory. Okay? So nasa lab siya. Because in your lab, you will have much more time there. So that's why we place the balancing of equations there. Okay? Marami kasi kayong time sa lab. Okay? So ayun. So again, these are the two basic types of reaction: synthesis, two molecules or more combining to form one product. Decomposition, you have one reactant decomposing into multiple products. Okay? Basically, yung mga products mo, they came from your reactant, obviously. Okay? So for example, the hydrogens in the product came from this. The oxygens came from this as well. Okay? And then we have the single displacement. This is another high school chemistry lesson. So what happens in a single displacement is that their partner changes. Okay? So this usually happens in redox processes. Later, makikita nyo yan. Okay? So when we have a single displacement, basically the ion changes its partner. Okay? So for let's say the B is our anion. Okay? So in the reactant side, your B anion is paired with the A. Okay? But on the product side, it switches partner. Okay? So yung nag-switch na siya ng partner, naging mag-isa na lang siya, and then iba na yung magkasama. Okay? So ganun. So that's the single displacement. Okay? So magpapalit lang siya ng kasama. Okay? So for example, silver nitrate and zinc here, the nitrate will change partner into zinc. Okay? So you have Ag and zinc nitrate. Okay? So same thing here with magnesium metal. So if you have magnesium metal, you react with the acid. No, the Cl will change partner. So you have H2 and MgCl2. Okay? Siguro you might be asking as well, no? Sir, paano namin malalaman yung products later? Okay? So for now, we are just reviewing, okay, kung ano yung mga alam natin nung high school. But later on, we will focus on much more detailed discussion na. Okay? So for now, chill lang muna because I know everyone knows this na. Okay? So yan. But later on, we will learn paano nila nalalaman yung products. Okay? How they knew that these are the products. Okay? So later yan. Okay? And then you have your double displacement. Basically, switch pairs lang. If say AB and CD mag-partner, so they will swap out partners. So you have AD and CB. Here are some examples. Sodium sulfide, hydrochloric acid producing sodium chloride and hydrogen sulfide. And then you have barium chloride reacting with sodium sulfate, and that will produce barium sulfate and sodium chloride. Okay? So yun yung mga basic types of chemical reaction which we know in high school Gen Chem, di ba? So again, synthesis, A plus B forming one molecule. Decomposition, you have your A decomposing into multiple molecules. So B, C, D, dot, dot, dot. Ito, pwedeng more than 2 yan. Dot, dot, dot. Okay? And then for single displacement, you have your A plus BC. Pwede siya maging AB plus C. Ayan. Something like that. And then for double displacement, basically you swap partners. A, A, D, B, C. Okay? Something like that. Okay? So again, paano natin malalaman yung exact products, no? You might be asking that, no? Kasi in your high school, you are just somehow tasked to identify the types of reaction, di ba? Ganun yung typical curriculum in high school. However, there might be questions na these are your reactants, no? What will be your product? Okay? So, if that was taught to you in your high school, then that's good. Okay? Pero if not, no, we will discuss it. Okay? Kasi in my senior high, I teach that, no, paano nila malalaman yung products given your reactants. Okay? So, dito natin malalaman yan. Okay? So now, let us talk about the more specific details on the types of chemical reaction. Dito natin malalaman what will be the products if you were given certain chemical reactants. Okay? So, there are several things that you have to remember here. Kaya you have to take note. Okay? Ayan. So, mag-ingat lang and take note tayo. Okay. Nagpapapansin ng aking pusa. Okay. So, yan. So, now, let's talk about the more specific types of chemical reaction. Okay. So, yung kanina, that is just a high school review. Now, let's focus on much detailed topics na. Okay. Dito na natin mape-predict yung products natin. Okay. So, yan. So, what are the specific types of chemical reaction? So, first, we have a combustion reaction. Okay. And then the other types of reaction in aqueous solution are precipitation, acid-base, and redox reaction. Okay. So, when you say combustion reaction, ano yan? Okay. So when we say combustion reaction, this happens when you have an organic compound reacting with oxygen in the air to produce water vapor and carbon dioxide. Okay, and if this reaction goes into completion, it should be shown as this. Okay, so your CXHYOZ. Okay, this is your organic molecule. Okay, this is your organic molecule. Okay, so example of organic molecule is glucose. Okay, so C6H12O6. If you combust glucose, you have to write this type of equation. So this is the format, okay? Ito yung format of the combustion reaction. If, kunwari, sinabi sa sentence, combust glucose. So how will you do that? Okay, so basically, you write the formula for the glucose, okay? And then you react it with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide and water. So you might be asking, sir, always ba ito yung isusulat sa right side? Yes, okay? Always yan ang isusulat because it is a combustion reaction. Okay? So yun. So kapag sinabi combustion reaction, basically, you react your organic molecule with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide and water vapor. Okay? So, yan. So, again, it is always written this way. Okay? Kasi, if we say combustion, ganyan talaga yan. Okay? So, yan. So, ngayon, no, alam nyo na kung paano magsusulat ng combustion reaction. No? For example, you react your benzene with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide and water. How will you write that? Okay, so basically, you just copy everything on the right. Okay, so plus O2 producing CO2 plus H2O. And then later on, you have to balance it na lang. Okay, so again, the discussion on balancing will be covered in your laboratory. Okay. So, yan. So, pag sinabi ko combustion, what will be the products again? Keep in mind that the products are carbon dioxide and water vapor. Okay? And everything else is just a matter of balancing, which will be discussed in your lab. Okay? Ganun lang. Very easy. Ayan. So, again ha, keep in mind, combustion, this requires organic compound in this formula. Okay? Yung XYZ, that those are subscripts which can be 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay? So for example, ito wala siyang oxygen. Okay lang yan. Okay? So yan. So C3H8. Okay? So that's your combustion. What are the products? Carbon dioxide and water. Okay? So now you know how to predict your products. Okay? So yan. However, there are some cases that combustion reaction does not uh, go into completion. Okay? So, hindi siya natatapos. Okay? One example of which is yung nasa lutuan nyo. Okay? So, if you notice, sa ilalim ng inyong mga cookwares, you have what's called the soot. Okay? Ano itsura ng soot? Let me Google it. Di ba pag nagluluto kayo, for example, eto, if nagluluto kayo ng ganyan, ano mangyayari sa ilalim ng nyo, panluto, nangingitim, no? So, what happens there? Okay, ganito. The reaction is incomplete, no? The combustion of your butane gas is incomplete so that you form the soot. Okay? Yun yung dahilan ba't nangingitim yung ating kalan. Bakit incomplete yung reaction? First is that maybe hindi enough yung oxygen. Okay? That's why some of the carbon are not fully oxidized to carbon dioxide. Okay? Some of the carbons actually turn into soot. That's why nangingitim. Okay? Bakit kulang yung oxygen? Kasi keep in mind, yung inyong lutuan, you place it on top of the fire. Okay? So when you place it on top of the fire, ibig sabihin yung oxygen, it can just come into the sides. Okay? Pwede na siya pumasok sa sides. Okay? Since nawala na yung yung oxygen na pwede pumasok sa taas, ibig sabihin the amount of oxygen in their fire is lesser than what is required. So that's why nangingitim yung ating mga lutuan. Okay? So if mataas yung lutuan nyo, okay, 'di ba may patungan 'yan sa stove. If medyo mataas 'yon, hindi masyado maingitim yung lutuan mo. Okay? Kasi mas maraming pwesto na pwede pasukan yung oxygen. Pero kapag mababa lang yung gap ng lutuan mo pati ng apoy, ayun, pwede mangitim yung kalan nyo or mga takure. Okay? So again, those are the products of what's called an incomplete combustion. Okay, and let me just charge my device. Yan. So again, those are the products, no? Those are the byproducts of incomplete combustion. Okay? So sometimes hindi siya full. Kapag full kasi, we produce carbon dioxide which is hindi dapat nangingitim because that is a gas. Okay? However, again, if the reaction is not complete, ayan, no, you can form a soot. Okay? When we say soot, that is just carbon. And yun yung kulay itim sa ilalim ng inyong lutuan. Okay? Sometimes, hindi lang soot yung napoproduce. Sometimes, pwede rin carbon monoxide. Okay? What is carbon monoxide? It is actually a gas that is very dangerous. Okay? So, pag may sasakyan, especially mga lumang car, okay? For older cars, no, their engines are not fully efficient na. Okay? Hindi na siya fully efficient. So sometimes the combustion is incomplete. Okay? Makikita mo naman yan sa sasakyan. Pag luma na, maitim na yung binubugang usok. Bakit? Ito yun, soot. Okay? So may soot na siya na produce kaya nangingitim yung usok. Okay? Kasi incomplete na yung combustion. Then, ito yung pinaka-dangerous, the byproduct of carbon monoxide. Okay? Okay? Why siya dangerous? Okay? Uh, if you if you know your Lewis structure, which you all know already kasi tapos na tayo doon. Okay? Nasa lecture 'yan, 'di ba? Ay sa lab. So this is your carbon monoxide. Ano itsura ng oxygen? So this is your oxygen. As you can see, they are very similar. Okay? So, when our carbon monoxide attaches to the hemoglobin of our blood, okay, hindi siya different than oxygen. Actually, carbon monoxide binds more strong than oxygen. Okay? Stronger yung bonding niya sa ating hemoglobin molecules than the oxygen. That's why people die of hypoxia when they inhale carbon monoxide now. And medyo mabilis yan, okay? Medyo mabilis yung death diyan because, again, the binding of carbon monoxide is strong in hemoglobin so that medyo mahirap siya i-remove from the system, okay? So yun, usually yung people who die in carbon monoxide, no, they will feel dizzy and then later on they will pass out. Okay? And since nag-pass out na sila, they cannot struggle anymore, no. Hindi na nila kaya lumaban kasi nakatulog na sila. Ayan, they die of hypoxia. Their cells are slowly dying because they don't have any oxygen na. Okay? So that's the danger of using old cars, no, that are not well equipped with catalytic converters. Okay, so what happens in catalytic converter of your car is that these carbon monoxides are further converted into carbon dioxide. Okay, so yung CO, pag nagpasok yan ng catalytic converter ng sasakyan, it turns into CO2. Okay? So this is better. Okay. Although we know that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and it is the reason why we are dying in the future. This is the reason why we will die in the future. Okay. So yan. However, the idea is that CO is more dangerous than CO2. Okay. So mas dangerous to kaysa sa CO2. So that's why our cars are equipped with catalytic converter. Okay. So the catalytic converter oxidizes your carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide. Okay? So, yan. So, again, yung old cars, they don't have this. That's why, dangerous sila. Okay? So, yun. Pag nakita mo yung mga lumang sasakyan, ang daming soot na nilalabas, yung kulay itim na usok. Okay? And then, carbon monoxide na very dangerous. Okay? Ito yung ginamit ng mga Nazi before, okay, in their horrible plans, no, in executing millions of Jews. Okay, so one of the most disturbing thing I learned from the Holocaust, no, is that um, ito medyo sensitive topic to, no, kasi this is real history, no? And we are commemorating this, no, in the next few months kasi mag-anniversary na ata yung Holocaust. I don't know. Okay. But the idea is that some of the people ginagawa daw ng mga Nazi is that nilalagay sila sa sasakyan and then yung tambucho ng sasakyan pinapasok nila dun sa sa may mga people. So yun, so very sad, no. Imagine, no, just one ideology in politics led to death of millions. Okay, so let us not let us learn from history. Okay, and let us not allow that to happen again. Okay, so never again. Okay, so yun lang, just a reminder lang, no, kasi I think malapit na yung memorial niyan. Okay, so yun. So, ganun ka-dangerous ang carbon monoxide na. It is not only used, no, in the extermination of our Jewish people, no, dati during the Holocaust, no. And even until now, no, some people actually die due to this. That's why our cars are equipped with catalytic converters. Okay? So anyway, ang dami ko nang sinabi. Basta mahalaga, you have an idea na, okay, kung ano yung mga meaning ng soot, ano meaning ng carbon monoxide, okay? So you now have an idea also on its biological importance, okay? Again, carbon monoxide looks like oxygen. That's why when it binds to the blood, you can actually die of hypoxia kasi they look very similar, okay? Hindi naman malalaman ng hemoglobin yun eh. Okay? Wala naman siyang brain. Okay? So, basta alam niyo may kumabit, okay na yun. Okay? Yan. Kaya pala namamatay ang mga RBC sa cells at work. Yung yan, di ba? Yan yung anime, di ba? ay, sige, since nasabi mo, I will try to look for that. Meron ba niyan sa Netflix? Kasi I think, criniticize ni Dr. Mike. Nanonood ako ng Dr. Mike sa YouTube. Sabi niya, medyo accurate naman daw. Tapos na ba yung memorial? Ayan. Late ko na nabasa yung news. Okay. Tapos na pala. Kasi ang daming mga daming mga nangyari dati, no. So ito, alam niyo na kung ano pinupunto ko, no. We have to learn from our past, okay? Let us not allow that to happen again, okay? So yan, learn from the past, okay? Lalo na kayo mga kabataan. Okay, go and register, okay? So yan lang. Okay. Go and register for the upcoming election that will be very decisive, whether we will still suffer or we will see changes in our society. Okay? Kasi pagod na kami. Pagod na eh. Okay? So anyway, alam ko pagod na rin kayo. Okay? So you know what I mean. Be responsible citizens. Okay? So that is the combustion reaction. Sinababoto ko. Wala pang lineup eh. Pero alam niyo na, may iniintay akong tao. Ang tagal niya mag-file eh. Okay. So anyway, so that is the combustion reaction. So basically, you react your organic compound such as fuel, and we call them fuel, okay, with oxygen to produce CO2 and H2O. Okay? So yan. Sometimes it is incomplete. Bakit? Kasi kulang ng oxygen. Most likely kasi tinatakpan mo, o kaya sometimes the temperature is not that high. Okay? So, kapag hindi masyado mataas yung temperature, the combustion is not complete talaga. That's why, dun sa kandila, 'di ba? Pag naglagay kayo dun ng glass, o kaya baso, lagay mo sa kandila, nangingitim agad na. Okay? Kasi, ang reason dun is that, for kandila, the fire is not that very hot. Okay? So, hindi siya masyadong mainit. Kaya, the combustion is incomplete. That's why you form soot. Okay? So, ayan. And so that is the combustion reaction. You just have to know the products CO2 and H2O. If incomplete yan, it could be just soot. Pwede rin namang carbon monoxide. Pwede rin namang combination of all three. Okay? Pwede yun. But I will not give an example on that kasi baka mas lalo kayong mawindang. Okay? So anyway, again, pwede rin combination of both yung product. Pwede may carbon, soot, merong carbon monoxide, merong carbon dioxide, and also do not forget water. Water is always produced in the combustion, okay? In form of water vapor. But in the body, that's liquid water, okay? So, yan. So, yan yung mga products natin, ha? So, now you know how to predict the products for combustion. Okay? Siguro, again, you might be asking, paano sir balancing? Nasa lab na yun. Okay? Nasa lab na yung balancing. Kayo na bahala dun. Okay? Basta ako, bibigay ko yung products. Okay, so next one, we have the reactions in aqueous solution. So again, the reactions in aqueous solution are many, okay? Kasi most of the reaction in chemistry actually happens in aqueous solution. When I say aqueous solution, meaning nun ay tubig, okay? And what happens with our ionic compounds when they are dissolved in water? They dissociate, okay? So this is very important, no? Our ionic compounds dissociate in water, okay? Bakit kaya ganun, no? Malalaman natin yung dahilan next chapter in the states of matter, okay? So, but for now, let's just absorb that our ionic compounds dissolve in order to create our ions in aqueous solution. Again, pag sinabing aqueous solution, water yung solution. Okay? Lalagyan mo lang ng ionic compounds. Okay? So, yun. Yun lang. Okay? So, again, keep in mind, they dissociate. So, it is very important for you to know your ions. Okay? So, kailangan alam mo yung ions mo. From NaCl, what are your ions? Na plus, Cl minus. HCl, ano ions mo? H plus, Cl minus. Okay? You just dissociate them. Okay? Will be very important. Okay? So, for example, dito, sabi dito, when you mix your different aqueous solutions, not all of them produce products. For example, yung tubig pati vinegar, may nangyayari ba pag pinaghalo mo sila? Wala, 'di ba? Okay? However, pag haluin mo yung vinegar pati Gaviscon, what will happen? Magbabubbles 'yan. Ba't ko alam? May Gaviscon kasi sa ref. Okay? So, yan. Gaviscon is an antacid. Okay? And then yung vinegar, that is an acid. If you combine them, what will happen? Magbabubble 'yan. Okay? That's why, kunwari acidic ka, like me, then uminom ka Gaviscon, mamaya didighay ka. Okay? Because there is a reaction between Gaviscon and your stomach acid. No? So, pwede yung gawin sa bahay. May pouch ng Gaviscon na nabibili. Okay? May pouch ng Gaviscon na bibili. You react it with vinegar. Bubula yun. Okay? So again, the idea is that not all things, no, when you combine them, not all aqueous solution, when you combine them, they form products. Okay? So, it is now our task to learn paano nagpo-form ng product, kailan magpo-form ng product. Okay? Kasi keep in mind, hindi lahat ng pinaghalo mo may reaction. There are some specific ions required in order for a reaction to happen. Okay? So, paano mo malalaman yun? There are several sets of rule later. Okay? Okay, marami yan. Okay? So, ito yung important. So, when will a reaction take place? A reaction will take place when number A. Letter A, you have ions that can combine to form insoluble products. Yun yung tinatawag na precipitation reaction. Okay? So, yun yung first requirement. If you have ions that can combine to form insoluble products, precipitation reaction. Or, pwede rin naman, you have ions that can neutralize each other, forming neutral substances. Tinatawag nating acid-base reaction yan. And lastly, you have species, no, that can transfer electrons. Yun yung redox reaction. Okay? So, mamaya titignan natin yan silang lahat. If we still have time, sana matapos natin. Okay? So that next week, practice na lang. Okay? So, anyway, so yun yung kailangan natin i-take note in order for us to observe reactions. Okay? Again, just to reiterate, hindi lahat ng pinaghalo may reaction. Tubig pati alcohol, hindi mo expect sa sabog yan. Alcohol pati asin, walang mangyayari dyan. Okay? Pero, when you mix specific aqueous solutions, okay, there might be reactions that can happen. Okay? So, these are the requirements, these three. Okay, you have ions that can combine to form insoluble products. We call that precipitation reaction. You have ions that can neutralize each other. You call that the acid-base reaction. And then lastly, you have species that can transfer electrons. We call that the redox reaction. Okay, so ano yung mga yon? Okay, so let's begin with this one. Precipitation reaction. Ano uli yung precipitation reaction? You react your chemicals in order to produce an insoluble product. When we say insoluble, hindi siya nadi-dissolve sa tubig. Okay? So, yan. So, precipitation reaction occurs when the present ions in a solution pairs to form an insoluble compound known as the precipitate. The insoluble compound may be solid or colloidal in form. Okay? So, to give you an idea, okay, so these are two solutions of magnesium sulfate and sodium hydroxide. But when you combine them, it turns into a cloudy solution. Okay? So, ito parehas siyang clear. Okay? So, yung white doon, that is just a reflection of light. Okay? So, parehas siyang clear. However, when you mix them, look at what happened, no? Nagbago yung kulay. Okay? Naging white siya. Yung white na yon, that is the precipitate. Okay? So, yan. So, I will look into some pictures pa, okay, to further emphasize yung ating precipitation reaction. Precipitation reaction. Na-discuss na to sa inyo nung high school, that's good. But, I'm not sure kung lahat na discuss yan. Okay? So, this is one example. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So, this is lead iodide. You have two clear solution of lead and iodine, iodide ions. But when you combine them, you form a yellow precipitate. Okay? Ayan. Precipitate tawag dyan. Okay? Pag may namuo, precipitate yan. Okay? Ayan. So, look at this. No? Clear solution. However, when you mix them, you form a yellow precipitate. Solid yan. Okay, so ibig sabihin, you can collect that. Okay? Pwede mo kolektahin yan. Okay? So, yan. So those are your examples of precipitation reaction. Siguro ito yung tanong nyo. Sir, paano namin malalaman that for this reactants, this will be the precipitate? Okay? Kasi hindi mo alam paano to naging solid. Okay? So, ito yung sinasabi kong rules. Okay? So, in order for you to know what your products will be, we have to memorize, okay, the solubility rules. Okay? Kung hindi kaya i-memorize, okay lang, i-print out nyo tong slide na to, itong picture na to, save nyo sa inyong desktop. Okay? Okay lang yan. Okay? But for me, most of the contents of this table, naaalala ko pa. So, yun. So, yeah, we just have to take a look into this table that will help us know or will help us predict kung meron tayong products. Okay? So, let's take a look at this. We call this the solubility table, wherein we can see whether a combination of two ions can form insoluble products. Basahin natin. Okay, so for lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, ammonium, kailangan marunong na kayo magbasa ng ions ha. Okay, so for these ions, ano sabi dito? All group 1A metal and ammonium salts are soluble. Okay, so regardless of whatever an ion they are always soluble. So, ibig sabihin, wala kang mabubuong precipitate kapag pinag-partner mo sila. Okay? So, they are always soluble. Kunwari, may nakita kang ionic compound. Ang cation ay sodium. Ibig sabihin, soluble agad yan. Okay? Kasi yun yung sabi dito sa rule. Basahin natin, nitrates. Okay? Ano meron sa nitrate as our anion? All nitrates are soluble. So regardless of your cation, whether that's iron 2, iron 3, cobalt 1, cobalt 2, okay, copper 1, copper 2, okay. So regardless of whatever cation you have, as long as the anion is nitrate, they are always soluble. Okay? Again, if hindi kaya i-memorize, that's fine with me. You can just print out the picture naman. Okay? So, yan. You can always refer to this. Okay. So, next one. Chlorides, bromides, iodides. Okay. Sabi dito, all common chlorides, bromides, and iodides are soluble except this. Okay. Pag nakita niyo yung word na except, okay, except this, ibig sabihin, these things here are insoluble products. Oh, look, this is lead to iodide. Okay. PbI2. Ayun yung pinakita ko kanina, 'di ba? Na kulay yellow. Ibig sabihin, precipitate 'yon. Okay? So, ang idea is that as long as these cations are the partner of your Cl, Br, and I, precipitate sila. Okay? Pag yung Cl pinartner mo kay Ag, precipitate 'yon. Kapag yung Cl pinartner mo kay mercurous ion, precipitate 'yon. Pag yung Cl pinartner mo kay lead-2, yung bromine pinartner mo kay silver, kay Hg2, kay Pb, ayan. Pag pinartner mo sila sa mga metals na yan, they are precipitates. Okay? So, yan. Next thing, we have the sulfates. Ang sabi dito, most sulfates are soluble except calcium sulfate, strontium sulfate, barium sulfate, and lead-2 sulfate. Okay? So, ayun. Pag nakita mo yung sulfate naka-partner sa calcium, strontium, barium, and lead, they are insoluble agad. Okay? Ako nakita ko yung calcium sulfate. This is white. Okay. Kulay puti yan. And then last one, acetate. All acetates are soluble. Okay? So, yun. So, kahit ano i-partner mo sa kanyang cation, soluble pa rin siya. Okay? So, yan. So, yun yung idea. Again, okay lang kung hindi makabisado. But, we have to remember that for each ion, there is a specific cation or anion that will cause them to be insoluble. Okay? Okay, so let's read the last the last category in this table. So, sir, kailangan insoluble para maging precipitate. Yes, okay. When we say insoluble, we are referring to the precipitate agad. Okay? So, I will interchange those two words often kasi same lang sila. Okay? Pag sinabi ko precipitate, insoluble yon. Pag sinabi ko insoluble, precipitate. So, that's why I always flip the words. Okay? Sometimes I use precipitate, sometimes I use insoluble. They are the same kasi. Okay? So, yan. So, again, what are the precipitates? Ayan. So, just look at this table. Naka-indicate naman. Okay? Otherwise, they are soluble. Okay? Kaya sabi dyan, usually soluble. Pinakita kung ano yung magpe-precipitate. Okay? Yan. Let's take a look into the last table. The last category here. Okay? Ito naman, sabi dito, usually insoluble. Okay? Kanina, usually soluble. Okay. Ano yung pinakitang exception dito? Ang exception dito ay mga precipitate. Okay? Dito naman, since kabaliktaran yung nangyari, usually insoluble, ang exception dito ay soluble. Okay? Pag nakita yung except, ibig sabihin soluble yan. Except, ibig sabihin soluble. Except, ibig sabihin soluble. Except, ibig sabihin soluble. Dito naman, sa part na to, pag sinabing except, ibig sabihin insoluble. Okay? So, yan ha. Just be careful ha. Pag sinabi except dito, precipitate yan. Pag sinabi except dito, soluble yan. Okay? And medyo baka ano kaya? Okay. Pero okay lang yan. Later on, we have several practice activities naman. Okay? So, yan. So, ano sabi dito? Let's read. Phosphates. Sabi, phosphates are usually insoluble, except when they are paired with ammonium and group 1 alkali metal. Kasi again, sabi kanina, ammonium and group 1 metals are always soluble. Okay? So, when you partner it with phosphates, they will be soluble. Okay? However, when you partner your phosphate with other metals, other cations, dun sila magiging precipitate. Okay? Carbonate. Ang sabi dito, all carbonate are insoluble except ammonium and group 1 cations. Okay? So, yan. So, yung carbonate, mamumuo siya. Okay? Kaya nga yung Kreml S, buo yun. Okay? Kasi yung baking soda, buo din yun. Okay? So, yan. Anyway, hydroxides, OH minus. Sabi dito, hydroxides are usually insoluble except when they are paired with ammonium, group 1s, strontium, barium, and calcium. Otherwise, they are precipitates. Okay? And then lastly, sulfide. All sulfides are insoluble except ammonium, group 1, group 2, magnesium, calcium, and barium. Okay? So, yan. So, again, just save this picture of this table. This will be very handy later. Okay? So, now, in the preceding slides, now, I will show you how we will use this. Okay? So, let's go back to our ions earlier. So, earlier, we have magnesium sulfate and sodium hydroxide. Paano ko nasabi earlier that this will form? Pag sinabing slightly soluble, ano lang yon? You consider it soluble. Okay. Malalaman natin yung term na slightly soluble in your analytical chem. Okay? Kasi di-discuss natin ulit sa analytical chem. Okay. But for now, just consider yung slightly as soluble talaga. Okay? Pag sinabing slightly soluble, you consider it as soluble. Pag sinabing slightly insoluble, you consider it insoluble. Okay? So you just remove the slightly muna. Okay? But we will discover more on that when we discuss our Anachem subject next sem. Okay? So sa Anachem yung more details talaga eh. Okay? So for now, just Just disregard the word slightly. Okay, consider it soluble or insoluble na lang. Okay. More details will be given to you next semester. Okay. So, yan. Baka ako rin maging teacher niya naman that time. Okay, so yan. So again, paano natin nasabi that when we react this, we form this? How will I know? Okay, ganito yung gagawin niya. First thing is you have to dissociate the ions of these reactants. Okay, so these are your reactants. You dissociate them. Okay, i-dissociate mo sila. So what are the ions you can form from MgSO4? Oh, you can do the reverse crisscross. Okay, ginawa natin yan last time eh. Okay, so MgSO4. Yung 4 ba yan? Ito yon. Hindi. No, hindi. Because SO4 is an entirely oxyanion eh. So gawin mo, you write a parenthesis now. So you have one subscript outside the parenthesis. Pag wala nakalagay sa labas ng parenthesis, ibig sabihin 1 yon. So as yung magnesium 1 din. And then you do the reverse crisscross. Okay? So hindi naman always kailangan mag-reverse crisscross. If you memorize the ions charge, and it will be much easier to deal with. Okay? Okay. So kunwari, Mg, you know this is group 2. So this is positive 2 dapat. Okay? Okay, so as you can see, when I do the reverse crisscross, positive 1 yung charge ni magnesium, which is wrong. Okay? It should be 2. Okay? So, ang idea lang dito is that probably ni-round down sila. Okay? They were reduced to lowest terms. Okay? So, if I multiply the charge by 2, I should do the same for the sulfate. Okay? So, yan. I got my original ions. Mg2 plus SO4 2 negative. Okay. So again, bakit naging 1 yun doon? Kasi when you crisscross these ions, what will happen is that they will have the same subscript, Mg2 plus SO4 2. So ang ginawa na lang, they just remove the 2. Okay? And so that's why we write it as MgSO4 lang. But again, keep in mind that the ions charge should be 2. Okay? Plus 2, negative 2. Kaya mas maganda kung kabisado nyo yung ions. Okay? Nasa previous PowerPoint naman yan lahat. Wala pa tayo sa part na yan. Wala pa tayo sa part na yan, Kyla. Okay. So, ang ginagawa lang natin, reactants to keep in mind, reactants. Wala pa tayo sa mismong precipitation. You just have your reactants. Ang sabi lang, first step, you dissociate them muna. Okay. Wala pa tayo dun sa part na yan. Okay. Kasi ito yun, oh. 'Di ba sabi ko earlier, your ions dissociate in water. So, yun yung ginagawa muna natin. This dissociate in water. Dissociate muna. And, so, yan. Dissociate muna. Ito rin. Dissociate muna. Okay. Magdi-dissociate muna sila bago sila magsama. Okay? Okay lang. I know kasi this is a new topic for everyone. Okay? So, if you are STEM student, probably hindi rin to naturo, siguro. Okay? But for my STEM students, kasi tinuturo ko to dati. Okay? Okay. So, pero sa ibang schools, I think hindi na. So, yeah, that's fine. Kasi di-discuss ko naman. I will try my best na. Okay, so again, so what we are doing here is that yung reactant, we dissociate it first because we know they are in water. Okay? So, ito, pag nilagay mo sa tubig, magdi-dissociate yan into ions. Ito, pag nilagay mo sa tubig, it will dissociate into ions. Okay? So, yun yung ginawa natin. Magnesium sulfate, they become ions. Sodium hydroxide, they become ions. Okay? So, hindi pa natin sila pinagsasama. Okay? Naghiwalay lang sila muna on a separate beaker. Okay? So, nasa ibang beaker to, nasa ibang beaker to. Okay? So, magkakaiba yung ions nila. Now, ngayon, pagsasamahin na natin sila. Okay? So, yung beaker ng magnesium sulfate, at beaker ng sodium hydroxide. We combine them. Okay? What will happen? When we combine them, the ions can start interacting. Okay? Dito, maghahanap na sila ng possible partners. Okay? So, what are the ions when we combine them? Okay? So, again, ito, they are separate beakers. Ito yung beaker 1, ito beaker 2. Okay? So, ito yung beaker 1, ito yung beaker 2. Pero, ngayon, pagsasamahin na natin sila. Let's combine them. What will happen when you combine them? The ions will check sino yung kanilang possible partners. Okay? So, ako ginagawa ko dito is ganito. I list down the cations. And then, I list down the anions here. And then, tinitignan ko kung sino yung mga pwede mag-form ng precipitate. Okay? So, tignan natin if yung partner ng MgSO4 magpo-form ng precipitate. Okay? So, ganun gagawin mo. Kasi yung ions mo, magkakahiwalay na sila. Then, you can start matching them up. No? Lahat sila ima-match mo kung ano yung mga possible matches. Match mo to dito, match mo to doon, match mo to dito, match mo to doon, and then you will check if may precipitate. Okay? So, let's try that. Lipat ko yung ions dito. Okay, so ima-match ko ito, pati ito. Tignan natin kung may precipitate ma-form. Okay? Let's check if we can form a precipitate. Magnesium and sulfate. O, tingin tayo dito. Basahin natin ano yung merong rule. Ito, sulfate. Sabi dito, sulfates are usually soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Okay? So, they are usually soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Ang cation natin dito is magnesium. Wala siya dito sa exception. So, ibig sabihin, magnesium sulfate is soluble. Okay? So, soluble yan. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, hindi mo sila pwede pagsamahin to form precipitate. So, okay? So, soluble ang MgSO4. How about magnesium and OH? You will always check yung partners, possible partners. So, chinek na natin yung magnesium and sulfate. Wala silang precipitate. Okay, edi proceed ka with the next partner. Let's try pairing magnesium and OH. Tingin tayo dito sa table. Walang sinabi about magnesium dito. Wala ring OH. Edi tingin tayo sa baba. Ayun. So, may sinabi about hydroxide. Ano sabi dito? Okay. So, sabi dito, hydroxides are insoluble. Okay? Hydroxides are insoluble except when they are paired with ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Okay? So, sabi dito, this is insoluble unless you pair it with ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Sino yung pinartner natin kay OH? Si magnesium. Si magnesium ba ay ammonium? Hindi. Si magnesium ba ay group 1 metal? Hindi. Si magnesium ba ay strontium? Hindi. Siya ba ay barium? Hindi. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, itong magnesium, it will form precipitate kasi hindi niya nasunod yung exception. So, sabi dito, all hydroxide are insoluble. And yung ating magnesium, hindi siya belong dito sa exception. Pag hindi siya belong sa exception, ibig sabihin, insoluble talaga siya. Okay? Yeah, that's the idea. Okay? So, wala siya sa except Wala yung magnesium dito. Ibig sabihin, ito yung rule na mag-apply sa kanya. Hydroxides are insoluble. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, the pair of Mg and OH, insoluble yan. Okay? So, lista natin. Mg and OH pair. So always ganun ha. So you just check the rules, no? Kung exception, tignan mo kung mag-a-apply sa kanya. Otherwise, it is insoluble. Okay? So yan. So na-check na natin to. Soluble yan. Kasi nandito siya sa soluble. Na-check na natin to. Nakita natin that it is insoluble kasi hindi pasok yung magnesium sa except. Wala siya sa except eh. Okay? Wala siya dito sa except. So, insoluble siya. Now, let's try sodium. Tignan natin kung may rule about sodium. May sinabi ba about sodium? Ayun, Na+. Okay. Ano sinabi about sodium? All group 1 are soluble. So, wag mo na i-check. Kasi soluble daw ito, pati yun. Kasi you have sodium. As long as you have sodium, they will always be soluble. Okay? So, ayan. So, basically, ang insoluble lang sa ating apat na ions ay kapag pinag-pair mo yung magnesium and hydroxide. Okay? So, yun yung sinabi ko dito. So, looking at the solubility rules, Mg can be paired with OH to form an insoluble substance, MgOH2. Paano nakuha yung MgOH2 na yan? Pinag-criss-cross ko lang. Okay? So, di ba you can crisscross this? This 2 will go down here. This 1 will go down there. So, you have MgOH2. So, this is your precipitate. Okay? So, ano na gagawin mo? So, alam mo may precipitate ka ma-form. What will you do next? Okay? Since nakita mo that Mg and OH can be combined to form the precipitate, then pagsamahin mo sila. Okay? Pagsamahin mo sila into one compound. Ayan. Ayan. So, MgOH, it is soluble. Yung sodium pati sulfate, pwede mo rin naman pagsamahin, pero you can write aqueous kasi hindi siya precipitate. But for MgOH2, you write S kasi solid precipitate yan. Okay? Precipitates are usually solids, kaya S yung nilalagay. Okay? So, ganun. Yung magpo-form ng precipitate, pagsamahin mo, yung hindi, edi pagsamahin mo pa rin, but you have to write the AQ. Okay? So this is your formula, MgSO4 plus NaOH producing MgOH2 and this one, sodium sulfate. Ay, criss-cross mo lang yan, okay? You will get this formula. Okay? So yun, again, for precipitates, indicate letter S. Meaning kasi ng letter S ay precipitate yan. Or insoluble yan. Okay? So always ilagay mo yung S para malaman na insoluble. Okay? So the representation here is a molecular equation wherein lahat sila nakakombine. Okay? Pag molecular, lahat nakakombine. Cation, anion, cation, anion, cation, anion, cation, anion. When we have ionic equation, you split them all into different ions. Yung MgSO4, pwede mo magsulat ng MgSO4. Sodium hydroxide, yung Na pati OH, pwede ko paghiwalayin. Magnesium hydroxide, pag solid yan, you just write it as solid. Okay? Hindi mo sila paghihiwalayan kasi solid yan. Lahat ng aqueous, you separate them into ions. So, this is aqueous, you separate it as Na and SO4. So, that's the ionic equation. And then as you can see, you can cancel out similar terms. Okay? So, what are the similar terms? The sulfates, you can cancel them out. The sodiums, you can cancel them out. Ang matitira ay ito. When you cancel the similar ions, you will have this final equation, the net ionic equation. Okay? So, in the net ionic equation, we show the formation of precipitate. Okay? Ang dami nangyari, no? So, to give you more, exercise on this, let us all answer these 5 questions today. Okay? So, sagutan natin tong 5 para mas makita natin yung gamit ng solubility rules. Okay? So, let me use my whiteboard para magamit natin. Okay, so let us use this whiteboard. Again, maraming nangyayari, no? Maraming rules. Okay, but I hope when we answered 5 items na to, sana mabigyan linaw. Okay, so because I know some of you are confused right now. Okay, because this is new. However, let us try to clear out everything. Okay, kasi this is important. Okay? Magagamit nyo rin kasi ito sa analytical chemistry. Okay, and that's why we have to discuss this. Okay, so sige. Let's start. Sabi dito, predict if precipitate will form upon mixing the following substance. Paghaluin daw natin sodium sulfate and barium chloride, magpo-form daw kaya sila ng precipitate? Tingnan natin. Okay. So we have sodium sulfate and barium. Ano yun? Barium chloride. Tignan natin kung may precipitate daw na mabubuo. Okay? So, ito yung technique ko na ginagawa. Okay? Although kaya ko to gawin mentally, pero I know this is just new sa inyo. So, you do this. First, step 1, nilalagay ko talaga. Nung inaaral ko pa to, I write step 1, dissociate. Okay? So, yan yung first step na gagawin niya. Dissociate everything muna. Okay? So, you do this. You dissociate everything so that you can know your ions. So, what are the ions that can be formed here? Na+, SO4, negative 2. Dito, ano yung ions na mapaform mo? Ba2+, then you have Cl-. Okay? So, yun yung first step ko. Okay? This is what I do before. Ayan, ito yung ginagawa ko dati para mas ma-visualize ko yung nangyayari. Okay, so step 1, dissociate. Yung reactants mo, split mo sila into ions. Step 2, pair them. Okay? Pairing to check PPT. Pag nilagay ko PPT, meaning non-precipitate. Okay? So first step, you dissociate them. You should know how to dissociate ions. Yung reverse crisscross lang yan. And then next step, you pair them. Okay? So yun yung ginawa ko kanina sa isang slide. So gagawin ko, susulat ko yung Na uli. Tapos tignan ko, ano yung magpo-form ng precipitate? Will this form a precipitate? Tignan natin. Will this form a precipitate? Tignan natin. Okay. Tignan natin. Balik ulit tayo dito. Let's always refer to the solubility rules. Ang ating cation ay sodium. May sinabi about sodium, di ba? Okay, ano yung sinabi about sodium? Pag may sodium, soluble parati yon. Okay? Ibig sabihin, there will be no precipitate with sodium. Okay? No precipitate with sodium. Okay? So, wala ako na buong precipitate doon. Kahit ano i-pair ko dyan, basta sodium yan, soluble yan. Okay? Again, PPT means precipitate. No? Okay. Okay, so wala akong nagawang precipitate kay sodium. So, ibig sabihin, I will try barium. Tingin uli ako sa solubility rules. Baka may sinabi about barium, SO4, and Cl. Okay? So, tingin tayo sa solubility rules. Let's check SO4. Pag pinag-pair ko sila, may sinabi ba sa table? Let's look at this. Sulfates. Ano sinabi dito? Most sulfates are soluble except when paired with calcium, strontium, barium. Ayun, andun si barium. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, when you pair your sulfate with barium, insoluble siya. Kasi sabi dito they are soluble except when paired with barium. Okay? Pag sinabing except, edi hindi soluble. Okay? Precipitate yon. Okay? So, sabi dito, when I pair sulfate with barium, sabi dito, precipitate yon. Except Okay? Yan. So, lagay ko, note ko dito, barium plus SO4 precipitate. Okay? Try natin yung barium pati chloride. Baka may sinabi din. Malay mo precipitate din pala yan. Tignan natin. Chloride, ano sinabi? They are soluble except silver, mercury 1, lead. Ang cation natin, barium So, soluble yung barium pati chlorine. Okay? So, yan. So, we were just able to form one precipitate, which is barium sulfate. So, you take note of that. Lagay mo yan doon. So, what will be the formula of our precipitate? So, you just do the crisscross, and ito yung magiging formula mo, BASO4. Yung 2, maka-cancel out yan. Okay? Kasi, maging ganito yan Again, if same yung subscript, you can just remove them. Okay? And combine them. Barium sulfate. Ayan, so ito yung precipitate. May precipitate tayo na buo. So, how am I going to write the final equation? Ano ba yung hinihingi? Sabi dito, molecular equation. Di pagsama-samahin ko yung ions. Okay? I will combine all the ions. Oops. Step 3. Combine ions and precipitate. Okay? So, sulat ko muna yung reactant. I will write the reactant muna ulit. Okay? Sodium sulfate plus barium chloride. Sino na yung bagong partners? Yung precipitate. Okay? So, they are new partners now. But since precipitate yan, I have to write solid. Okay? So, ito yung new partners. Okay. So, ibig sabihin nun, so kung sila magka-partner, edi, si sodium chloride yung next partner. Okay? Ayan. So, kasi, inunahan na niya no? They will form precipitate kasi. So, magsasama na sila. Okay? If they can form precipitate, they will always combine. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yan, since si sodium pati sa chlorine, wala silang partner, edi sila na lang magsasama. Okay? So, that's why we write them. We write them there. Okay? So, again, for precipitate, it is very important for you to write letter S. Letter S meaning yan ay precipitate. Okay? So, this is our molecular equation. That is our molecular equation. Take note, this is unbalanced. Okay? Madali lang yung balancing yan. Okay? So, you just count the number of atoms. Okay? So, but however, I will not do that for now. Okay? Kasi di-discuss pa yan sa lab niya. Okay? So, but for now, this is our equation na. Okay? So, we knew using our solubility rules that barium will change partners with sodium. Okay? Magpapalit sila ng partner. Because if they do, they will form precipitate. Okay? So, yan. And lastly, ano pa yung hinihingi? Okay. Hinihingi net ionic equation. So, how will you do the net ionic equation? Step 4. Ang dami nangyayari guys, no? Okay lang yan. Ganito talaga yan. This is the simplest way of doing this now, net ionic equation. So how are we going to write the net ionic equation? Okay. So again, in the net ionic equation, note ko dito, note, split lahat, na split everything except the precipitate. Okay. So you split this, split this, but not this. Okay. Because we know that this will be joined talaga. Hindi mo talaga mapaghihiwalayan kasi precipitate yan. So let us split Na and SO4 into ions. Okay. Split natin to into ions. Split mo yon into ions. Split them into ions. Ito, you should not split this, okay? Kasi yun yung sabi sa net ionic. You split everything except the precipitate. So yun, you just copy it as is. Okay? Then, to determine your net ionic equation, you can cancel out similar terms. Okay? So on the left side, I have sodium. On the right side, I have sodium. So I can cancel them. On the left side, I have chlorine. On the right side, I have chlorine. So I can cancel them. So ano yung natira? Ang natira ay itong dalawa. So Ba2 plus SO4 producing barium sulfate. So this is the net ionic equation. Ang daming nangyari, no? Yes. Pero it is what it is. Yan talaga yan. These are the steps we have to do in order to answer just one problem. Sir, need po ipakita ang canceling. Yes, we need to show it. Okay? It is necessary for you to show it. Why? Kasi we have a term for them. Ang tawag sa mga kinancel out natin ay ang tawag natin sa kanila ay spectator ions. Okay? Tawag natin dyan sa kanila ay spectator ions. What does it mean? Spectator, ibig sabihin, marites, tingin lang. Nakatingin lang sila. Nagre-react sila, tapos sila nakatingin lang. Sabi mo, sige, magsama kayo. Yan. Chismis nila yan sa kapitbahay. Yan. Spectator ions. So, spectator ions doesn't do anything at all. Basically, they are just there. Nandun lang sila. Before and after, yan. They do not participate in the precipitation reaction. So we call them spectator ions. These are ions that do not form precipitate. Okay? So yan. So again, just to show you everything that we have done. Ito yon. Ang daming steps. Okay. Step 1, dissociate your reactants. Step 2, pair your ions. Pair mo to dito, pair mo to doon, pair mo to dito, pair mo to doon. And then when you see a precipitate form, you determine its formula. Criss-cross mo lang yan. And then lastly, you combine everything again to form your equation. This is unbalanced, okay? Madali lang naman mag-balance. Okay, so yan. So you have this. And then what's next? If you are asked to determine the net ionic equation, sometimes okay na to. Sometimes okay na to. But there will be questions sa quiz na maghahanap nito. Okay. So for you to determine the net ionic equation, you split everything again into ions except for the precipitate. Split mo to, split mo to, split mo yon. But this one, you should not split this. Okay? You just copy it as is. Then you can cancel out similar ions to get the net ionic equation. Again, the ions that we canceled out, they are called spectator ions. Sir, sa pag-combine ng equation, parallel muna tas crisscross or depends kung sino mag-PPT? Sa molecular equation, kung ito mauuna or yan. It doesn't matter naman as long as you indicate letter S for the precipitate. Pwede ito mauna, pwede ito. Okay. Okay lang kahit sino mauna as long as tama yung ions. Okay. So, yan. Basta, always keep in mind, when you see a precipitate, no, na pwede ma-form, you have to write letter S agad. Do not forget that. Okay. Yung iba, kahit wag mo na isulat yung AQ. Okay. Ito, AQ to, AQ yan, AQ yan. Ibig sabihin ng AQ, soluble. But for this one, this is a precipitate, so you really have to write letter S kahit anong mangyari. May letter S talaga yan parate. Okay? So, yan. So, we are done with this first equation. Let's try to, I hope na medyo na clear yung ating confusion earlier, no? So, there are just several steps you have to take, okay, in order to answer the problem. Medyo time consuming siya, pero it is what it is. Ganun talaga. Time consuming talaga siya. Okay? So, ganun talaga yan eh. Okay, so let's try this one. Copper nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Let us check if we can form ions. If we can form precipitate here. Okay. Now, let me just copy it again in the whiteboard. Okay. Number 2 na tayo. Ano yun? Copper nitrate. Okay. So these are our ions. Let us check daw if we can form precipitates. Okay? So ano ulit step 1? Step 1, dissociate. Okay, dissociate everything. Again, yung balancing hindi naman siya important sa ngayon. Okay? Kaya nga una tong dinidiscuss parate. Kasi hindi naman kailangan yung balancing sa ngayon. Okay? So what are the ions that we can form out of this? You just do reverse crisscross. Cu2 plus, NO3 minus, this is NH4 plus, and SO4 negative 2. Okay? So yan, you dissociate everything first. Next step. Di ba, medyo bumibilis na tayo. Basta marunong kayo mag-crisscross sa isip. Okay? Ayan, kailangan marunong kayo mag-ganon. Isang tingin lang, alam nyo na. Next step. Ano yung next step natin? Ano ba sinulat ko dito? Pairing to check precipitate. Okay, sulat ko yan. Pairing to check precipitate. Okay, so let's do it. And just copy the ions again. Copy ko lang ulit. Okay, so let's check if we can form precipitate dito, doon, dito, doon. Tingnan natin kung may precipitate na ma-form. Okay, so maybe let's begin with this one. Okay, let's begin with that one. Hanapin natin yung table. Okay, so yan. Ako kasi alam ko na yung sagot eh. So yan. So, ang sabi sa rule, nitrates. All nitrates are soluble. Ibig sabihin, kahit ano partner niyan, walang precipitate. Okay? Ibig sabihin, nitrates are soluble. Ibig sabihin, wala tayong precipitate na mabubuo. Okay? Whether ito yan or ayon. No precipitate yung mabubuo. Okay? Kasi yun yung sabi sa rule eh. Nitrates are soluble. Okay, so bigo tayo kay nitrate. Now, let's proceed with the next one, sulfate. Okay. So, let's begin with sulfate. Ano sabi sa sulfate? Basahin. Most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Okay, so ibig sabihin soluble siya unless you pair it with calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. So do we have strontium, calcium, barium, lead? Dito, wala. Meron tayo copper and ammonium. So, ibig sabihin, so since hindi siya kasama sa except, that means this, when you partner them, okay, when you partner them, soluble pa rin sila. Okay? So, it happens that in our case, our sulfates uh, are soluble. They are soluble with Cu2 plus and NH4. So, since it appears that wala tayong ma-form na precipitate, no, kahit ano gawin natin. Kasi yung nitrate, kahit ano gawin mo, soluble talaga yan. For sulfate, magiging insoluble lang yan when you pair it with calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Pero, these are copper and ammonium eh. Hindi naman siya calcium. Hindi naman siya lead. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, soluble talaga siya. So, what could be our conclusion here? Our conclusion here is that there will be no precipitate. Okay? Wala tayong mabubuong precipitate. So, what should you write? Ano dapat isulat mo? In case that you cannot form precipitate, ibig sabihin nun, there is no reaction. Again, kapag wala kang makitang mafo-form na precipitate, there will be no reaction. Ito yung sinasabi ko earlier that not all solutions, when you combine them, magpo-form ng product. Not all. Okay? Okay? Hindi lahat magpo-form ng product. Okay? For example, yung toyo pati suka, pag pinagsama mo yun, may nabubuo ba? Wala naman, di ba? Okay. Kasi yung ions that are present doon, they don't form precipitate. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, the reaction of this, no? Ano uling reactant natin? Copper to nitrate and ammonium sulfate, they will have no products. Ibig sabihin, no reaction. Okay? So, ganyan. Yan yung isasagot nyo. Okay? So, kunwari, magbibigay akong practice quiz dito. So, don't worry. Matitrain kayo. Okay? So, you will see whether pag wala kayong magawang precipitate, edi you write no reaction. Okay? But, if you can write a precipitate, then you have to do all the things that we have done earlier. Okay? Pag may nakita kang precipitate, ito, precipitate yan. Ayan, so you have to do everything that we have done earlier. You combine them, that's the molecular equation. You split them again to ions, and then you cancel out similar terms. You get the net ionic equation. Okay? So again, when you are unable to form a precipitate, ibig sabihin nun, walang reaction. So that's why not all liquids, when you combine them, not all react. Okay? Because they do not have the ions necessary for them to produce a product. Okay? Walang mabubuo. Okay? Ano lang siya. As is lang silang ions. Okay? So, yeah. So, that's our answer for number 2. There is no precipitate. So, ibig sabihin, no reaction. Okay? Pag no precipitate, no reaction. In the case of precipitation reaction. Next one. Number 3. So, I hope na mas nagiging clear na tayo, ha? Okay. Hopefully, nakikita nyo na yung clarity sa lahat ng ginagawa natin. So, there are just some steps that you really have to do. Okay? Kailangan talaga gawin yun. Okay? So, you just follow what I have written here. Dissociate, pair. If may precipitate, you combine. And then, lastly, you get the net ionic equation. If you cannot pair any ions to form precipitate, ibig sabihin, there is no reaction between them. Okay? There is no reaction between them. But if you are able to pair them and form a precipitate, then you have to continue sa step 3 and 4. Okay? Siguro nagwi-wish na kayo, sana walang precipitate sa quiz. Meron. Okay. Okay, merong precipitate. So, at first, no? At first, medyo maraming nangyayari, no? However, di ba, tignan mo, mabilis na nga natin nasagutan yung number 2 kasi walang precipitate. Okay. So, over time, no, bibilis din yan. Okay. Ako kasi, no, since I've been doing this for many years na, isang tingin lang alam ko na. So, hopefully kayo, you will develop that thing as well. No? Kasi magagamit nyo to sa analytical chem next sem. Okay? So, yan. So, kung ako pa rin teacher nyo, ayan, di-discuss uli natin to next term. Okay, next sem. Okay. So, ganun. Okay, so you will need this in your AnaChem. Pero may math lalo doon. Kasi analytical chem is the chemistry with lots of math. Okay? So let's proceed with number 3. Okay, so I hope medyo clear na tayo sa mga nangyayari ha. So we are halfway na eh. Yung 4 and 5, I will let you answer this na lang. Okay, so kayo na bahala sa 4 and 5. If you download the PowerPoint, may sagot naman doon eh. Okay? So may sagot doon sa 4 and 5. Last na sasagutan ko would be number 3. Okay? So let me try number 3. So our ions are aluminum nitrate and sodium hydroxide. Let us see if we can form a precipitate. Step 1, dissociate. So what are the ions? So we have Al. So kailangan mabilis na kayo mag-determine ng ions ha. So isang tingin lang, you know what are the ions. So you do reverse crisscross, you will get Al3 plus and nitrate. About this one, Na plus, OH minus. Step 1, tapos na tayo. Next step, step 2, check for precipitate. Okay? So pair to check for precipitate. So we will do the same. Yung audio medyo unclear pa. Hello, 1, 2, 3, mic test. Okay na ba? Low. Hello. Hello. Okay na ba? Ayun. Okay. Pag hinihinaan ko boses ko, iniisip niya kasi noise. Medyo sakit kasi lalamunan ka. Okay. Ganun talaga pag teacher. Sakit na lalamunan mo. Okay. Ayan. Okay. So, medyo lakasan ko na lang boses ko so that it will not register as a background noise. Okay. So, these are our ions. Aluminum, sodium, nitrate, hydroxide. Tingin ulit tayo sa table. Let us check the table again. Asa na yung table? Ito. Okay. So, let us check again if we can create precipitate. Okay? Sino yung mga pwede natin i-partner? Ito, ayun. Ito, ayun. Okay? So, tignan natin. So, for aluminum and nitrate, let's check. Ano sabi? Again, sinabi, nitrates, they are always soluble. Okay? Yan. So, bigo tayo dito. Nitrates are soluble. Okay? Mapapansin nyo later on, makakabisado nyo na lang yan. Okay. About aluminum and hydroxide, basahin natin. Ano sabi sa batas? Ayan. Usually insoluble hydroxide. Ano sabi? All hydroxides are insoluble except those of ammonium and group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Ibig sabihin nun, kapag hindi ito yung partners ni hydroxide, hindi ammonium, hindi group 1, hindi strontium, hindi barium, hindi calcium. If hindi yun yung mga partners ni hydroxide, ibig sabihin it is insoluble. Okay? So again, they are always, hydroxides are insoluble except when you pair them with those ions. Listen, kapag ito yung partner ni hydroxide, ibig sabihin soluble siya. Otherwise, it is insoluble. Let's take a look again into our picture diagram here. Sino yung partner ni hydroxide? Aluminum, which is in group 3. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, bagsak na siya dito. Hindi siya group 1. Hindi din siya ammonium. Aluminum nga eh. May nakita ba kayong aluminum dito? Walang sinabi. So, ibig sabihin, aluminum hydroxide is a precipitate. Ayun. So, Al3 plus and OH can form precipitate. Ayun. Finally, may precipitate na tayo uli. So, yan. So, they are precipitate. How about sodium? How about sodium? You don't have to check for sodium anymore because you know that this metal is always soluble. Wag mo na i-check yung ganun-ganun. So, pag nakabisado nyo to, madali na lang ang buhay. So, yan ang sabi. Sodium, they are always soluble. Okay? So, yan. So, sabi sa ating table, aluminum and hydroxide can form precipitate. Okay? So, what's the formula of the precipitate? Formula of precipitate. That's AlOH3. Paano naging ganun, sir? Ganito lang. Okay? So, you do the crisscross. Just like what we did last time. Itong 3, lagyan mo ng parenthesis yung polyatomic. Yung 3, lagyan mo sa baba. Yung 1, lagay mo doon. So, AlOH3. So, we are able to form precipitates. Therefore, we should proceed with the next 2 steps. Okay? Step 3 tayo. Ano yung step 3? Ano yung nilagay ko doon? Kalimutan eh. Yes, combine ions. Okay. Ito, we have a question. Sir, since sodium is usually soluble and OH is usually insoluble, which property does always takes priority? Ito yung sabi kasi. For hydroxides, sinabi naman dito na except group 1. Ayun, sodium is group 1. So, ibig sabihin, nagmamatch yung kanilang solubility. Okay. So, sodium is soluble, sabi dito. Sabi naman kay hydroxide, it is soluble as well when you pair it with group 1, in which sodium belongs to. Okay. So, yan. So, ito yung sodium dito. Except sodium. Ayan. Kasi nasa group 1 din siya eh. So, ibig sabihin, nagmamatch yung kanilang solubility. Okay? So, when you combine them, they really form insoluble. Okay? So, yan. Okay lang. Kasi mas maganda yung ganun. Yun. Okay? So, yun. Step 3. We will now combine them. Okay? Combine ions. So, you start with your reactant, yung original reactant. Nasaan ba yung original? Ito yung original, diba? I'll just copy it. Okay? Just copy everything. And just copy everything. And then, since you are able to form a precipitate, you write it na. Okay? So, this is your precipitate. You write it here. And then whatever is left sa ating ions, pagsamahin mo na lang sila. Okay? So yung red precipitate, yung green, hindi siya precipitate. Sorry, I forgot. Lagyan mo ng S ang precipitate. Then yung natira, edi pagsamahin mo sila. Sodium nitrate. Okay? You just do the crisscross for sodium and nitrate. So again, what do we call this? This is our molecular equation, where everything is shown by pairs, and you really have to indicate S for your precipitate. S meaning solid, insoluble. Okay, so yan. So may S dapat siya parate. Okay lang yung iba wala nakalagay, basta siya may S. Okay? So that's step 3. Last step. Step 4. Net ionic equation. Ionic equation. Net ionic equation. Now, what are we going to do here? Split everything again. Paghiwa-hiwalayin mo uli lahat except for the precipitate. Okay? So, paghiwa-hiwalayin mo ito, ayun, but not this. Okay? Ito, paghiwalayin mo yan, ito, pati ayun, but not this. Okay? So, what are the ions that we can get out of this? The Al3 plus, NO3 minus. Ano ions natin dito? Na plus, OH minus. Precipitate yan. Hindi mo siya papakalaman. You just copy everything. And then this one, you split them. Okay? So once you are able to split them, you cancel the spectator ions. So what are our spectator ions? Kung ano yung nag-exist sa left and yung nag-exist sa right. And basically, they did not participate in the reaction. So what are those ions? Sodium and nitrate. Okay? So yun. So yung kinancel ko again, they are spectator ion. Sila yung mga marites ng ion. Nakatingin lang. Yan. So sila yung mga marites. And whatever is left, yun yung ating net ionic equation. Sir, ano po ilalagay pag walang precipitate? Pag walang precipitate, no reaction. Yun lang, no reaction. Yan. Yun. So you have to take note of that. Kung ano yung natira, yun yung net ionic equation. Al SOH Al OH3. This is our net ionic equation. Net ionic equation. Okay. So again, all the equations here are unbalanced now. Okay, unbalanced yan lahat. Kasi i-discuss pa lang sa lab nyo yung balancing. Okay? Although I know that you have an idea how to balance them, but for now, I will not proceed with that. Kapag wala kang precipitate na mabubuo, you cannot proceed with step 3 and 4. Okay? So, katulad nito, di ba? I stop sa step 2. Kasi kapag wala kang precipitate na mabubuo, wala kang magagawang ibang wala kang malalagay dito sa step 3 and 4. Okay? Kasi mangyayari, when you combine the other pairs, basically magka-cancel out din sila. Okay? Pagdating mo sa part na to, pag sinulat mo pa rin yung mga ions na yon, they will all cancel out. Ibig sabihin, walang nag-form na precipitate. Okay? So again, if you saw na walang precipitate, lagay mo na lang no reaction. Ibig sabihin, wala kang molecular equation, wala kang net ionic equation. Okay? So that is for ions that cannot form precipitate. Wala po kasi precipitate yung number 4. Let me check. Tignan natin. Si number 4 ay, yes, wala siyang precipitate. Because potassium is a group 1 element and it is always soluble. Ammonium as well, it is always soluble. Okay, so yeah, no precipitate. For number 5, sabihin ko na yung sagot. For number 5, the precipitate that you can form here is copper 2 hydroxide. Okay, copper 2 hydroxide. Okay, so yan. Let me write it here. Okay, and it is up for you na lang to see kung paano ko nasabi yan. May spoiler na. So ito, no reaction to. Pag no reaction, ibig sabihin no precipitate. Ito, ang precipitate dito is copper OH2. Now, it is your task to show me paano nyo nakuha yan. Hindi, kayo na yan. Basta, ayan yung ating clue. Sagot. Okay. So, gawin nyo na lang yung molecular equation and net ionic equation. Okay? So, ganun lang. So, I hope na we are more clear kaysa kanina. Kasi kanina, alam ko nakaganon kaya ano daw. That's normal because this is a new topic for most of you. Okay? Especially those who did not come from STEM backgrounds. Yeah. So, is it important? Yes, because you will use this in Anachem, okay? Which is your subject next sem. So, yeah, you really have to remember all these things, okay? So, yeah. Next one, we still have few times. May onti pa tayong oras, so we can still proceed. Let's talk about acid-base reaction. So, di ba again, there are 3 requirements for us to have reactions in aqueous solution. So, we are done with the precipitation. Next is the acid-base reaction. Yung acid-base reaction, madali lang to. Okay? So, that's why I will proceed with this part. Okay? It is just easy. Because in acid-base reaction, you have your acid. Okay? When you have your acid, the cation is H+. Okay? We know that already because we discussed the nomenclature of acids, di ba? Sabi ko doon, for acids, the cation is H+. And then, diniscuss din natin last time that our anion for bases ay hydroxide. So what happens when you combine an acid with a base? This is what happens. Your H from the acid can react with OH of the base to form water. So H plus OH produces water. It produces water. Okay? So yan. So acid plus base equals water. Ano meaning ng salt? Okay? So the salt is basically the other ions na. Yung other ions na hindi H, hindi OH. Okay? So yan. So this reaction is called neutralization reaction. Madali lang to. So let's take a look here. So we have HCl and sodium hydroxide. So you have to determine the ions first. So ano yung ions na mapo-form mo dito? H+, Cl-, Na+, OH-. Ito yon nasa baba. Then you see, yung H and OH pwede pagsamahin. Okay? Ibig sabihin, ito ay acid-base reaction. Okay? So yan. So these are our ions. You see kanina that H and OH can be combined to form water. Yung water, ilalagay mo letter L. Kanina, kapag precipitate, letter S. Ngayon, sa acid base naman, kapag water, you write letter L. Ibig sabihin, liquid. Okay? This is water. Okay? So again, ito yung mga subtle info that is important. Okay? So yan. So kapag letter S kanina, that's precipitate. Kapag water yun na form, you write L, liquid. Okay? So ano gagawin mo sa natira? Ito yung salt na tinatawag. Okay? So the salt is basically all the other ions na na-form. Salts, tawag ba? Okay? So, ibig sabihin, pag pinaghalo ang muriatic acid, pati ang liquid sosa, magno-neutralize yan. Okay? Kung kayo naglilinis ng CR sa bahay, ako, naglilinis ako ng CR parati sa bahay. So, yan. I know that liquid sosa is a base, muriatic acid is an acid. Okay, so if I combine them, magno-neutralize sila. But, that will be very dangerous for you to do. Okay? Kasi sasabog yan. Sir, yung water po, ay, wag nyo inumin. Wag nyo inumin. Although neutral yan, although neutral mapo-form na yan, pero syempre marumi yung tubig na yun eh. Galing yun sa mga pabrika eh. You should not drink that. Okay. But that's the idea, no? They will form water. Okay? So, wag nyo inumin yun ha. Delikado.
Sir, what kind of acids or property are acids from the movies po, sir?
Movies na yung... Anong movie? Para baka alam ko yung movie. Melting acid thing. Yeah. So, ano yan? So, di ba usually pag nanonood kayo ng mga horror, yung bangkay, nilulubog nila sa acid para matunaw. Okay. That is hydrofluoric acid. Okay. This is an acid, no, that is used by people to fully degrade the meat, no, para yung bone na lang matitira. Okay. Mawawala yung flesh, yung bone na lang matitira. That is hydrofluoric acid. Okay. So you can use other acids naman, but however, due to electronegativity of fluorine, okay, ata electronegativity na naman. So due to electronegativity of fluorine na yun, it really destroys the flesh more than the other acids. Okay. Yan. Weak acid to be honest. Okay. This is a weak acid. You will learn more of this in analytical chem. So this is weak acid. However, due to the electronegativity of fluorine, it tends to abstract the electrons of other molecules. So that's why natutunaw agad yung flesh kapag HF. Nako po. Pag may mangyari niyan, susumbong ko na kayo doon. Mamaya ituro niyo pa ako. Si Sir po nagturo. In-explain ko lang ha. Baka mamaya kung ano gawin niya dyan. Don't worry, mahirap makakuha ng HF. Okay. Kasi even the glass can't handle HF. Sa sobrang tindi ng electronegativity niya, kahit yung glass na lalagyanan, nasisira din. Ayun. Okay. So, yun lang. So, these are your tasks. Basically, madali lang to. I will answer 2 of them. We still have some time. Okay. Predict the products and determine if there will be precipitate. Okay. Bakit kaya siguro isip kayo ng bakit sir may precipitate? Kasi sometimes we can form precipitates. Okay. Sometimes we can form precipitates. Okay. Meron din namang times na hindi, no? Okay. Pero in the case for acid-base reaction, you are just concerned with the OH and H. Okay. So it doesn't matter kung may ma-form na precipitate or not, as long as the H and OH reacts. Okay? So let's determine our ions for number 1. Ito, madali lang to. Determine the ions. So ano ions natin dito? H plus and PO4 minus 3. About this one, you have Cu3 plus and OH minus. So again, ang priority mo kapag acid-base is the H plus and OH. This is your priority. Pagsamahin mo na agad yan. Okay? So basically, ang susulat ko dito ay eto. H2O plus whatever is left. Okay? So this is Cu3 plus, this is PO4 negative 3. So if I crisscross them, yung 3, hindi mo na kailangan isulat, right? Okay? So ganito yung punto ko dyan. So this 3, ilalagay mo doon, this 3, lagay mo doon. So that's this. So again, as you can see, they have the same subscript. So pwede mo na burahin yan. If they have the same subscript, just erase them. So you have your final formula, CuPO4. Okay, is copper phosphate a precipitate? Okay. So again, kapag acid-base, sometimes pwede siya mag-form ng precipitate din. Okay, now let's check if this is a precipitate. Nagbalik na naman yung precipitate. Ayaw tayo pakawalan na. Tingin tayo, nasan kaya yung precipitate ba yan? Let's check. Tingin ulit tayo, phosphate. Ang sabi kapag phosphate, all phosphates are insoluble except for ammonium and group 1. Eh, ang meron tayo, ano meron tayo? Copper. So, hindi siya ammonium, hindi siya group 1. So, ibig sabihin, copper phosphate is really insoluble. Okay? So, again, the idea is that in doing acid-base reaction, sometimes it overlaps with precipitation reaction. Okay? So, sometimes it overlaps. However, it is not necessary naman, okay, na may precipitation, okay? As long as your water is formed, ayun, you're good to go na. Basta may tubig na mabuo, okay tayo dun. Okay? Saan mabubuo uli yung tubig? From the H of your acid and from the OH of your base. Okay? So that's our answer. Okay? So we knew that this is a precipitate according to the solubility rules. Last one. Clutch na natin to. Ilang minutes na lang. Okay. So next one, you have your aluminum hydroxide, nitric acid. So what are the ions? Al3 plus, OH minus. For this one, what are the ions? H plus, NO3 minus. Again, your priority is the H and the OH. Okay? So that means you can form water, and kung ano yung natira, you just pair them. Okay? So that will be aluminum nitrate. Okay? Okay, so that is the product. So aluminum nitrate, is this a precipitate? Not. Okay, this is not a precipitate. Okay, because we knew earlier, sabi that all nitrates are soluble. Okay, so hindi siya precipitate. So wag mo na ilagay yung S. Okay, so basically that's the first two types of reaction in aqueous solution. Next meeting, we will discuss another topic that is somehow new to everyone, okay, the redox reaction. This is very important because in analytical chemistry, you will have to learn this again, okay? So, yan. This is important. So, yan. Bali, yan na rin naman yung last. So, we will dedicate our last meeting for the redox reaction kasi medyo mahaba to, okay? So, yan. So, ano yung nagawa natin today? Marami. Very productive day for us. No? So, we started with the general types of reaction which you learned in high school. So, synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, double displacement. However, sabi ko nga earlier that we are in college, so that means we have to level up our knowledge in chemical reaction. So, hindi lang tayo synthesis, decomposition, something else. That's so high school. So, we have to level up. Therefore, we have the combustion, precipitation, acid, base, and redox. Yung tatlo na discuss na natin today. So in combustion, basically you have your organic molecule reacting with oxygen in the air to produce CO2 and H2O. Okay? Sometimes if the combustion is incomplete, you produce a soot, which is yung kulay itim sa ilalim ng mga kalan. Okay? And then carbon monoxide, which is very dangerous. Okay? It can cause hypoxia, okay, or low oxygen levels, which can cause cell death. Okay, and then we have the reactions in aqueous solution. The important thing here is that you know that your ionic compounds dissociate into ions. And then later on, yung ions na yon, they will combine to form many products. Okay? So, kailan magkakaroon ng reaction if they satisfy one of these requirements? Isa lang kailangan. Okay? If yung ating ions na napaghiwalay, they form precipitates, ibig sabihin, the reaction will proceed. If no reaction, if wala kang precipitate na mabuo, ibig sabihin, no reaction. Wala nangyari. Just like pagaluin mo suka pati asin, walang nangyayari. Masarap lang siya as as sausawan. Okay? Pero no reaction 'yan, okay? So 'yan. And then the acid base, basically the H reacts with OH to produce water. And whatever the ions na matitira, sila yung magiging salt. Okay? For example, H and OH will combine to form water. Yung Na and Cl, matitira sila. Okay? So, yan. So, yan. So, ganun lang ka-easy. And again, sometimes, you have to remember this, sometimes in acid-base reaction, we can form precipitates as well. But it is not necessary naman. Okay? So again, thank you for attending the session. I hope na you learned something today. Okay? Next meeting, we will discuss redox reaction. So ka-enjoy. Iba na yan. Okay? Sige, so thank you. And I hope you learned something today. Hopefully, na-clarify natin yung precipitation. So I will see you again next time. Ingat and pwede na magsangyup, pwede na magpagupit, basta vaccinated. So if you're not yet vaccinated, please do so. Okay? So bye-bye, ingat. Okay, so I will end the meeting na.